David Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Cheap Trick, and I've had some requests to feature some of Cheap Trick's music, and these guys are legendary. Cheap Trick formed in Rockford, Illinois in 1973, so that means this year is their 50th anniversary, in 2023, which that's super impressive. They released somewhere like 20 studio albums, 4 EPs, 8 live albums, including the very famous At Budokan, various compilations. They've sold over 20 million albums worldwide. There's no question, Cheap Trick are legends of rock. Imagine if the Beatles and Elvis had punk influences. And that kind of gives you like at least a blurry picture of what Cheap Trick sounds like. So anyway, here we go. So if we're talking about Cheap Trick, that means we're talking about Rick Nielsen, the legendary guitarist in the band, for sure. And when I think of Rick, there's a number of things I think about. Obviously the band, Cheap Trick, and their music. But then also just his kind of awkward, nerdy, personality or whatever. And it came through music videos and photographs and stuff like that. He was always making like weird faces or picking his teeth or his nose or, standing weird with these like noodle arm, postures and stuff. Very different than a typical rock star. Usually rock guitarists are over in the corner, leather jackets, sunglasses, trying to be real cool. And Rick was noticeably awkward and nerdy, almost the entire time. And I always liked that. And if he would have been like the cool rock guy, it would have been, Cheap Trick would have been different, but with him and his kind of antics on stage and the kind of awkward, nerdy, kind of personality, it definitely gave him like this different, look and sound and everything. And then the other thing I always think about is his massive guitar collection, which I think I read somewhere. His collection's down to like 400 or maybe 500 guitars, which is still, that's really impressive. But once upon a time, I think he had upwards of like 2,000 guitars, which is crazy. So the music and chord-based ideas in this episode came from 70s Cheap Trick. So, this is the first time I featured the band here on the channel, and we haven't talked about Rick's playing or, Cheap Trick's music. And I'm a sucker for that 70s Cheap Trick. I mean, no offense to the 80s and 90s and everything else they've made, but there's something really magical and special about those early albums, like the first 5 or 6. Great stuff. So anyway, here we go. The opening, that was the song Hot Love from the first Cheap Trick album, their self-titled debut from 1977, and it's this rowdy, bouncy, really aggressive riff like this. Something like that. So it's crazy and frantic and he's all over the place and it's really aggressive. It's more attitude than articulation, I think, for this riff. And I saw some live footage of them like back in the 70s and Rick was just going crazy on stage, falling down and rolling around, and they were playing this. But with the opening, he's basically sliding into this really common, kind of a blues slide. Think of A, and he's moving into this G and that E right there. But then I started to actually just play it like a little part of A7 like that. And that actually kind of fits, because right after that, you're basically doing kind of like a smash, like double stop right there. So it's a mix of like double stop, single notes, that open A string, and that little part of A7, which I was just kind of sliding into that. Slower with that kind of AC/DC groove, and it totally sounds like AC/DC right there. Like that. And then right there, he basically slides into A7. Starts doing almost like that kind of turnaround in a way where it's building right there. And that good old standard, Chuck Berry lick right there at the end of that phrase. Do it again. And kind of ends with that Chuck Berry lick, right into the verse. That's a rock out song, and I've always liked that just kind of rowdy, riff in the beginning. Really cool. Next up, Clock Strikes 10. This is from the album In Color, and this actually starts with the Cheap Trick doorbell, like this. So it starts with this harmonic, intro, which sounds like a doorbell, big time right there. Right, that B to G, and then kind of do it reverse. And if you have a friend that has a doorbell like that, take your guitar over to their house and fool them, because it sounds like a doorbell. Couple rounds of that, and then you've got this extended chromatic riff, and I just played it like this. Right? You can do that a couple different ways. I didn't like doing it that way because it's like, different numbered notes on different strings. That just felt really weird for my picking hand. I kind of preferred it this way, where it's uniformed. That F sharp, and then you just start doing that boogie kind of blues riff, E5 to E6 right there. To a G5, G6 right there. To A5 and A6. Go back to E5 and E6. G5 and G6. Right there, go to B5 and B6 now. And then end with that D5 and D6. And it keeps going, of course, right there. But I always like that song because it starts with that doorbell, which is so cool. Next up's the song Eau Claire, and this is from the album Heaven Tonight. It's the last track, and it's kind of a throwaway song. I'm not really sure what the meaning behind the song is. It's less than 2 minutes long, and the only lyrics, they just keep saying Konnichiwa over and over and over. And I know Cheap Trick definitely broke ground in Japan. They had some huge concerts and had a huge, reaction and response. And that kind of helped them break, their music. So maybe this was kind of an acknowledgement of that, or something they jammed on, in their Japanese tours. But guitar-wise, Eau Claire's just doing this. But it's also kind of teaching you like an interesting chord progression. So it's D sus4 to D major right there, like a D over A technically, because I think that A string's in there open too. Like that. So D sus4 to D major, and then move over a set of strings. Now it's A sus4 to A major right there with the open A. And then move over another set of strings. Now it's E sus4 to E major right there. They're all implied chords, but that's what's happening, just kind of sidestepping your way down. But it sounds really cool, and that's a cool track. I wish it was a full song, because it's like, man, what were they getting ready to do right there? Really simple, but really effective too. It just grabs your attention. Next up's the song Big Eyes from the album In Color, and something like this. actually starts off with a series of augmented chords, which is really unusual, especially in rock. But an F sharp augmented right there. Then move over to the next set of strings. Now it's a B augmented implied right there. And then E minor right there. And then this is going to function as what, an F sharp sus4 flat 9, which is really weird. You know, if you're looking for a riff to keep your neighbors awake at night, you know, play that about 3 o'clock in the morning and you'll probably have the cops called on you. But that's a very, you know, unsettling riff for sure, but I like it. Really ugly, and then it goes to a single note riff. Like that. Cool song, and I love that creepy, you know, augmented chord intro. Really cool. Next up's the song Need Your Love. This came from the album Dream Police. I think it's actually the last song, and this is honestly one of my favorite Cheap Trick songs. It's commonly overlooked. It just has this groove, and it's just screaming 70s to me. Even though Dream Police technically came out in 79, it's like the last year of that decade. But it just total 70s vibe. So it starts with this extended octave intro. And we could talk about that, but I kind of skipped the intro just to get really to the heart of the song. So after that intro, and just kind of moving around, you know, like this melodic kind of octave idea, you hear this. So it's really simple, but it grabs your attention like, hey, there's something building, you know, right here. So after the octave intro, you just hear that low E palm muted. And then that. And it's really just, you know, a 7th fret bar to an E minor. And then do it again. And then after that second hit right there, you're going to hear E5. And then it's going to look like a B power chord down here, but played against E. You can relate that to E, and that'd be like an E sus2 implied right there. And then that right there, that C sharp A and C sharp right there, that's like an E6 sus4. Up to it where it looks like a D power chord over E, and you could think of that as an E7 sus4 implied. So you could definitely relate these to the power chords, you know, E5, B5 over E. This is going to be an A over C sharp, but it's against E, so like an A over E, and then a D5 over E. You could totally think of it that way, but anytime you're hearing, you know, just pedaled root notes like that, I usually relate all the chords to that root note. So E5, E sus2 implied, E6 sus4, E7 sus4. But check out that song, it's got a really cool groove, and I love that dark progression right there. Next up's the song Down. This came from the album In Color, and there's actually 2 guitars here. And the first guitar is an acoustic guitar, kind of lower in the mix, like this. Guitar, it's kind of like D major, and then a C sus2 right there, and then move down to B flat. It's like a B flat 6 right there, and then back to that that C sus2. And the second time right there from C sus2, you're going to go to a G over B right there. And then the B flat 6. That's the cycle right there. D, C sus2, B flat 6, C sus2, and then D, C sus2, G over B to B flat 6. Electric guitar playing with that, and it's playing higher parts of the chord. So it's D major here, C sus2 right there, B flat 6 like that, back to C sus2, and then that G over B right there. Guitars kind of line up together, something like this. Guitar parts come together like that, where they're basically sharing, you know, a chord progression. One's playing low and the other's playing high, and when you hear it together, it's like magic. Last but not least is the song Come On, Come On, and this is also from the album In Color. And Cheap Trick's album In Color is brilliant, so if you're not familiar with that album, I highly recommend it. There's some great music on there. And this song is maybe not as well known as I Want You to Want Me, or Surrender, or The Flame, or some of those really popular Cheap Trick songs. But they do occasionally play this on the radio. Great song. And there's two guitar parts. So the first guitar part's doing this. Implied chord progression, and everything's played against that low E. You know, so I'm going to relate all these chords to E once again. So there's E major right off the bat. Take that, move it up a whole step, and that's going to be an E6 sus2 sharp 11 right there, implied. So the cowboy E up a whole step, and it's E6 sus2 sharp 11. Take that, move your middle and third finger to the 7th fret, and that's going to be an E6 sus4 implied. Take that, move it up a whole step, and now it's an E major 7 sus2 implied. So you don't have to name the chords that way, but since all you're hearing is that E root note, I'm just, you know, once again relating all those chords to E. E major, E6 sus2 sharp 11, E6 sus4, and E major 7 sus2. So that's guitar 1 right there. So that's kind of playing like the lower part of those chords, right? And then the second guitar part is playing the higher part. You know, like the mirror image, but it's the higher part of those chords. So I'm going to loop this with the MXR clone looper, and it's something like this. Simple but extremely effective. You know, I mean, that definitely grabs your attention, and you can't help but think, like, what's getting ready to happen after that? Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Cheap Trick. Definitely a legendary band. I've always loved their music, and there's just something about Rick. I don't know what it is. I mean, he's like Mr. Guitar. He's almost like Billy Gibbons or somebody like that. where he's literally like a guitar diplomat, and he shows up either, Vintage Guitar Monthly magazines or online somewhere, and he's pulling out old guitars, or he's inspecting an old guitar, or just all that knowledge and history and awareness, and when I meet somebody and they're like, oh yeah, Cheap Trick, and it's like, how can you say that? Like, they're literally legends, and you don't have to be a huge fan of their music, but you definitely have to respect Rick. Like I said, he's kind of like a diplomat of the guitar and very respected. They have a huge cult following, and it's just one of those bands. Of course, I'm from Chicago. I mean, these guys are from Rockford, Illinois, just up the road or whatever. So I'm very aware of where they're from. I've never met Rick, but I'd love to shake his hand and thank him, for his great music and his personality and just really shaking things up and rock. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.